Greetings, gamers! Welcome to the 13th episode of my Dissecting Rogue Decks series. In today's episode, I am bringing to you the culmination of the Demise and Ruin side of this archetype, one of my favorite ritual archetypes of all time, and in a more competitive deck, one that can play online. I won't guarantee you great success, but it absolutely can play online, especially if you have the correct setup, good hand, so on and so forth. That's kind of how these old archetypes are, is because they're not as consistent or good as new archetypes, especially given the fact that new archetypes are one-card combos. And unfortunately, most ritual archetypes during this two-card combo era were not two-card combos. So, which is one of the reasons why pre-preparation of rights and preparation of rights exist. Due to this factor, you're not going to have as much success with old school ritual decks as you would with modern ritual decks or with modern archetypes. That's just understood. With that being said, it is time to get into the showcase of my deck. And this is my Annihilation deck for the Demise and Ruin archetype, giving you basically the best of everything that it has to offer, at least as best as I can muster here, because the issue is like I said, this archetype struggles just like all old school ritual archetypes in that they're not reliable, they don't have good power, nor do they have protection typically, and they have an issue of keeping up with the supposed grind game of modern decks, and the fact that 2-card and 1-card combo decks and archetypes and engines are typically better than anything you're getting out of this. In fact, what's crazy is Demise and Ruin came out during a time where going first was basically a wasted turn, and going second was what you wanted to do regardless anyway, because it was just more beneficial. The only thing you could do going first is set up some traps, especially counter traps, things like Solemn Judgment, which most people hesitated to use anyway because life points were looked at as some really good resource, whereas most people kind of like chuckle at that fact now. It's kind of very weird how Yu-Gi-Oh has changed, because going second is virtually useless. However, it can be done. In fact, as of late, I've been having extreme success online with my Kaiju decks going second because of certain ridiculous 1-card combo archetypes coming out, having crazy boss monsters that you just can't deal with going second. Unless you have Kaijus, that is. We'll be getting to that sooner or later. However, first and foremost, time to go over my Annihilation, Demise, and Ruin deck. The first card in my list is a hand trap, and I have 3 of them. This is actually a card that realistically kind of belongs in every single deck in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because this stops a lot of things. For one, it stops your opponent, if you're going second, from being able to draw and add and search to his hand, just regardless. If your opponent cannot negate this, you just kind of win the duel, especially against certain decks, because a lot of them need to draw and search and recur and so on and so forth, add cards from the deck to the hand. Droll and Lockbird stops this. If a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the draw phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. For the rest of this turn, cards cannot be added from either player's main deck to the hand. This is probably the most powerful, but also least, I want to say toxic. It's the least toxic hand trap. It's probably the most powerful, but also least toxic as well, because this also stops. This works on your turn as well as your opponent's turn. If your opponent is searching, drawing, so on and so forth on your turn, let's say your opponent uses Maxi, and then the new card Fualos. He uses a combo of those. Every single time you special summon, your opponent's going to draw 2. Not just 1, 2. I don't understand why Maxi exists in Master Duel and people have a problem with it, and then there's times where it's limited or semi-limited in Master Duel, but then they go, you know what this game needs? Another Maxi. And that's not even semi-limited. So we've got, the issue of Maxi at this current time is semi-limited, and then you have stuff like Fualos. A multitude of ways to throw in your deck. Basically, 5 cards you can put in your deck to just stop your opponent from wanting to special summon. So Droll and Lockbird can stop that. It's very good. It's very awesome. Now, the problem is your opponent does have to add or draw from the main deck to the hand a card during yours or your opponent's turn before you can activate this. So let's say your opponent resolves Maxi and Fualos. You have to wait till you have summoned once, and then your opponent gets the draw too. Then you can use Droll and Lockbird. So that's unfortunate. That's just how that works. But I still think it's very powerful. It does help you in that. And especially if you're going second, which this is a going second deck, a lot of going second decks would prefer to have Droll and Lockbird, because if you're going to go second, which you can pretty much well guarantee you're going to online, you want to be able to stop your opponent from drawing and adding. So this is awesome. Incantation, Pencil Plume. I have one of those. I have 3 Candle. I have 1 Bookstone. I have 3 Talismandra, and then I have 1 Zaborg. Zaborg is an interesting card in this deck because you would look at him and go, wow, why is a Monarch, a Mega Monarch, just randomly in a Demise and Ruin deck? This monster is single-handedly one of, if not the best, generic support for ritual cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's the weirdest thing that this is how it works. It's because of a culmination of things that occurred after he came out. And that has to do with the cards that were added to the extra deck, especially due to Herald. But other cards as well. Now, you're going to want this card. I have a way to search him. But even without talking about the way to search him, which is I think is a very cool thing added to this wonderful archetype here, I'm going to go ahead and go straight into the discussion of the extra deck. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because of what Zaborg the Mega Monarch does. If this card is tribute summoned, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. And if it was a light monster, both players send as many cards as possible from his extra deck to the graveyard, but not more than the original level or rank of that destroyed monster. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a light monster, add this additional effect. You can choose the cards your opponent sends to the graveyard. So what's cool is a lot of the incantation monsters are light monsters. Candle and Pencil Plume are light monsters. Either one of them gets on the field, which pretty much they're going to guaranteed get on the field, and you summon over one of those light monsters with Zaborg. Then you destroy Zaborg. If his effect resolves, you're sending 8 cards from your extra deck to the graveyard, and this is insane. This is powerful because it can basically stop your opponent from doing anything to stop you. And how this is possible is because if your opponent wants to continue playing the duel, he's going to have to use his negates to stop certain things, like for instance, Elder Entity, Entus. This is a fairy monster you can send from your extra deck to the graveyard. It does not have a once per turn effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 card on the field, destroy it. I have 2 of these. I can send both of them and destroy 2 cards on the field in the same turn. I do Skull Knight, 2 Skull Knights. These do have a once per turn effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 monster on the field, destroy it. And then I have 1 Skull Wagon, which does this for spells and traps. These are both once per turn effects, so typically I'm only going to send 1 of those, but it just kind of depends. Because if my opponent only has 1 thing on the board to destroy, then I'm only going to send one Elder Entity. I can just send them both, but I could, just set up my graveyard regardless. I have 3 Herald of the Arclight. So if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 ritual monster or 1 ritual spell from your deck to your hand. This is not once per turn, so you can send all 3 of these and get 2 spells and 1 monster, or 2 monsters and 1 spell, or any combination thereof. I have Wind Pegasus. If another card you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card is on the field or in the graveyard, you can banish this card, then target 1 card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. This is awesome. This is another graveyard sendable monster. I have actually 10 monsters I can send to the graveyard, even though I only have realistically 1 way to send 8 monsters to the graveyard. The reason why this is important is because if my opponent has nothing on the field, literally nothing on the field, then there's no reason to send Elder Entity and then just send all of the rest of my extra deck that is sendable, which would be Skull Knight all the way to Psi Frame Lord Omega. This would be 8. And the reason why that is because then I can set up the board and my graveyard for later on down the road plays. My Psi Frame Lord Omega, if this card is in the graveyard, you can target one other card in the graveyard that's yours or your opponent's, shuffle both that card and this card from the graveyard into the deck. So this can help me remove a problematic card in my opponent's graveyard or recur something in mine, and I think that that's well worth it. These 10 monsters that I've said so far cannot be played in this deck. They do not work. There's no way to summon them, period. Literally just no way to summon any of them. I don't have tuners, so I can't summon any of these heralds. Any of my wonderful incantation monsters, if they're on the field, you can't summon from the extra deck regardless, so you can't even use them for that kind of effect, so on and so forth. And, I don't have any fusions, so there's that as well. I do have Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max, which requires 2 level 10 monsters, and once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card, inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent. This can allow me to, if I get both my level 10 Ruin and Demise on the field, this can allow me to nuke my opponent's field with Demise, go in for an attack with Ruin and Demise, and then in my following main phase too, I could summon Gustav Max, do 2,000 extra damage. Hopefully that's enough for game, and if it's not, whatever, I can overlay on top of that with Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Lieb. And he's kind of cool because once per turn you can also XE summon Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Lieb by using 1 rank 10 machine XE's monster you control as material, transfer its materials to this card. And then once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card. It gains 2,000 attack and defense. Also, for the rest of this turn, you can only declare an attack with this card. During each battle phase, this card can make attacks on monsters up to the number of materials it has +1. So if you have 1 material, you can attack twice. If you have 0 materials, you can only attack once. If you have 4 materials, you can attack 5 times, which is not likely, but basically the only way that I'm getting out Zeus in this deck, and anytime you have Xyz monsters you want to have Zeus in that deck, is if I go into battle phase with this monster rather than my rituals. So I would have to first create Rail Cannon Lieb, do the 2,000 damage, then go into, or Gustav Max, then go into Lieb, and then go into battle phase. Now, depending on what my opponent's board state is, this is kind of important, because even though Demise and Ruin cannot be destroyed by card effects or battle if both the level 10s are out on the field at the same time, the problem is that they're not really that strong. 3,000 attack can be beaten by a lot of things. A lot of decks have 4,000 attack monsters. So having Lieb gives me an out to this because he can turn into a 6,000 attack point and defense point beater at the cost of 1 material, and that's a permanent upgrade, by the way. And then after battle phase, I could always just turn into Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder, which everybody knows what this card does, right? Once per turn. Or a quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. So another field nuke, which is awesome. And then once per turn, if another card you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. So you can add material to Zeus. This typically doesn't happen because Zeus has no protections himself. So let's say if your opponent Raigekis, well, Zeus is going to die. I mean, of course, your opponent could go into battle and destroy one of your other cards and not realize Zeus can do this, but it's just not super likely. After that, of course, is Typhon, because Typhon is one of the best extra deck cards in existence, period, because you can summon him over pretty much anything. Now, of course, the only card in my deck that would allow me to summon Typhon without first getting rid of the incantation monsters is Droll Knockbird. This does kind of stink, but this extra deck isn't really all that important, nor is it ever going to really be used. It's just here for options, just in case. And then finally, I have Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. Now, Typhon, I didn't really explain his effect, but if your opponent summons 2 or more times, either on the turn that you're currently playing or the turn previously, you can summon this card by using the highest attack point monster you have on the field, which could be any of your ritual monsters if you need it, or Droll and Lockbird, for instance, which is hilarious. And then, while this XE summon monster is on the field, neither player can activate the effects of monsters with 3,000 or more attack. This is like a skill drain, but better because this works from anywhere. So your opponent can't activate monster effects with 3,000 or more attack in the hand, field, graveyard, or banishment. Or deck, just anywhere. Just cannot be activated, which is very cool. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, return 1 monster from the field to the hand. This is very good, very powerful, very strong. Removal, it's not necessary, and realistically, you could just keep that on Typhon, and then the following turn go into battle with Typhon, keep the skill drain effect, and so on your next turn, if Typhon survives, you could go into battle with him, then make Zeus afterwards, which is not unrealistic. It's not super likely, but it's not unrealistic. Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos is actually the best boss monster in this deck because he can non-target banish, he can increase his attack points permanently, and he can attack multiple times in a battle phase, depending on the monsters he destroys, so on and so forth, which is pretty cool. Also, if you use a level 7 or higher monster as material your opponent cannot target with card effects, also it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so he's a pretty decently strong boss. I slot him into every deck that can possibly create him, because I think he's a really cool boss monster, a really cool link. And it's just so awesome that old school cards got the treatment of an update in some kind of way, or a retrain in this case, to allow them to continue being useful in other decks or in their own deck as well. So after good old Zaborg, which is why I went over the extra deck, I have Nibiru. Nibiru is my only other monster hand trap besides Droll and Lockbird, because I don't really need a lot. Sure, this deck would probably be better if you had things like Ash and Maxi and so on and so forth. The reason why I don't have those is because I don't want the deck to be too big. The bigger it is, the less competitive it becomes. This is true of most, not all, but most decks. So you do want to keep that in mind. So for me, I decided to keep this at a 40-card deck. Rituals are pretty consistent the smaller the deck you have, especially because of the incantation as well as pre-preparation of rites. I do have 1 incantation Chalice Slime, 2 original Demise, 1 Ruined Supreme Queen of Oblivion. The ideal setup is actually to have her on the field as well as Supreme King, but typically what you're actually going to have on the field is the original Demise and Supreme Queen Ruin. There are a couple other cards of this archetype that are decent. They're decent for this deck, and they're kind of decent regardless. So, for instance, like Demise the Agent or the Angel, those can be helpful. The original Ruin is terrible, so you would never really use this. And what this virtually means is that a Demise and Ruin archetype basically wants to nix Ruin. Ruin kind of plays by herself, or with like Demise to just blow up the field, and then you kind of do things with Ruin. But specifically, you want to kind of focus either on Supreme Queen or the original Demise or Supreme King of Demise. And these are the only cards that are legitimately viable in this ritual archetype for battle or for big boss monsters, so on and so forth. I do have Krieltar, which is very necessary for this deck for his recursion, as well as, just putting bodies on the field. And then he's also useful for a certain searcher I'm going to use later on. Pre-preparation of rites, of course, I have at 3. If you have a ritual spell that directly mentions the names of your ritual monsters, and you have that ritual monster, there's no reason why you wouldn't use pre-preparation of rites. Now, of course, this can only search out the original Demise, and the reason why that is because the original Demise is the only one of these monsters that has that name that's mentioned on pre-preparation. End of the World, and Cycle of the World both mention Demise and Ruin, the original, so you can search any of these with pre-preparation, which is pretty good. I thought about having 3 Demise so that I could use all 3 pre-preps, but pre-prep can take that ritual monster from the deck or the graveyard, so it's not that big of a deal. It's just too bad that Demise Supreme King and Ruin Supreme Queen only say this card's name becomes Ruin or Demise while in the hand or on the field. If it was in the graveyard as well, pre-preparation would be so much better, because then you could dump these into the graveyard and then get your searcher still, which is pretty good. Pot of Extravagance, I have one of these because my extra deck isn't necessary at all. It is useful, of course, for Zaborg's effect, but let's say I don't have Zaborg and I want to use Pot of Extravagance. Well, Pot of Extravagance gives me just a free draw too, because the extra deck is optional in a Demise and Ruin deck. And the next card I have is actually a card that I believe is just good in every single possible going second deck regardless. There's a lot of people who will say that going second decks really want to go into battle and do the damage. That is true even of this deck also. This deck does not set up a negate board, it doesn't set up omni negates, it doesn't set up monster negates or anything of the sort in any way, shape, or form. So this is risky. Dark Ruler No More allows you to just bypass your opponent's negate board that he put up on turn 1. Sometimes that can be enough to allow you to just blow up your opponent's board, and if he has nothing in hand, nothing on field, and can't really recur, you just win. Now, this isn't true of every single deck. A lot of decks will be able to beat over this regardless. Like I said, Demise and Ruin are not what I would consider competitive. So negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of this turn after this card effect resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. So your opponent's monsters can't do anything about this. It's pretty great in that factor. I do have triple tactics talents, just in case my opponent does activate something like, I don't know, Joel and Lockbird or Ash or so on and so forth. It's just very useful. The next card I have is actually a very important card. It's called Small World. Small World is honestly a card that I could probably spend an entire episode just going over this card. So I'm going to try to sum it up and teach it as best as I possibly can. And then hopefully I can demonstrate it in this episode. I'm going to attempt to get a take where I have that as an option. Hopefully that's what happens, because I would like to show it off, not just tell you what it does. So Small World says reveal one monster in your hand. Choose one monster from your deck that has exactly one of. Now, it can only be one. It doesn't say exactly one of and only one of, but it can only be one of these. So exactly one of the same type, attribute, level, attack, or defense, and banish the revealed monster from your hand face down. So that card just goes away. It's literally of no importance now. Then add from the deck to your hand one monster that has exactly one of the same type, attribute, level, attack, or defense as the monster chosen from your deck, and banish the card chosen from the deck face down. So you can only activate one Small World per turn. So what Small World basically does is you can take a card in your hand, a monster in your hand, you reveal it, and then you search in your deck, you choose in your deck one card that matches only one of that card's type, attribute, level, attack, or defense, and then you banish face down the card you revealed, and then the card that you chose in your deck, you're going to get exactly one of only that monster's type, level, attribute, attack, defense, so on and so forth, from the deck, add it to your hand, and then you're going to banish that the chosen monster face down. So the revealed and the chosen, revealed in your hand and the chosen in your deck, are both banished face down at the end of this. So you're minusing 3 to get a card directly to your hand. A lot of people would say this is terrible. Small World is an incredible searcher. This card, single-handedly, depending on how your deck is built, will allow you to search anything. Anything in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Any monster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! There are some decks that work so well with this that it's almost as if you're flubbing completely. You're throwing the game if you don't use this card with that deck. A good example of this would actually be Sub-Terrors, because Sub-Terrors are all Earth monsters with different attacks, defense levels, and types. The only thing that they share with each other is Earth. That's literally it. All of them are everything different. So if you have any of them in your hand, you have Small World in your hand, you can search any of them in your deck. Any of them. Now, the card that you reveal cannot be the same card, obviously, as the card that you choose, and that cannot be the same card, obviously, as the card that you take and add to your hand. Now, you wouldn't want that anyway, because why would you reveal that card to search the same card? It's just no point. Unless that card had a banish effect. However, the problem is cards typically only have an effect being banished face up. This banishes face down, and I think this is for the purpose of you not being able to use things like Necroface to just banish cards consistently in both yours and your opponent's decks. So this card is very interesting. This works in a lot of different ways. Basically, the incantation archetype is super good. Engine is super good with Small World, and the reason why is because they all are different types. So this one is a Psychic, you have Pyro, you have Spellcaster, and you have Plant. There's 2 attributes, Dark and Light, so you can use those. They all have 0 attack and defense, and they all have different levels, so 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this gives you a pretty wide range of things that you can search for in your deck. An example of how you could do this is you would want to banish Talismandra. He's a level 6, 0 attack, 0 defense, plant, dark, monster. And then this would allow you to then banish an original Demise King of Armageddon, because the only thing he shares with this monster is that they're both dark. So you would reveal Incantation Talismandra, you would banish, or you would then choose a monster in your deck that has one of, and only one of those things mentioned on Small World. And see, Demise is a level 8, dark, 2400 attack, 2000 defense, fiend monster. The only thing that he shares with Talismandra is that they're both dark. Then you would banish your chosen Demise, searching Zaborg. The only thing that Zaborg shares with Demise King of Armageddon is their level. Zaborg is Thunder. He has 2800 attack, 1000 defense. He's light attribute, and he's a level 8. So the only thing that they share is level 8. This is actually the perfect setup. His Talismandra to Demise King of Armageddon to Zaborg the Mega Monarch. Another way you could run this is with Incantation Kandal. You could reveal Kandal, then you could choose Krieltar, then you could get your way to Zaborg, because Zaborg, the only thing he shares with Krieltar is the fact that they are both light. So there is 2 ways. Through Kandal, any one of the Incantation monsters will get you to Zaborg. However, you have to be careful what your chosen monster is. If you choose a dark monster, or if you reveal a dark monster, either Bookstone or Talismandra, you have to go through Demise to get Zaborg. And if you have either Kandal or Pencil Plume, you have to go through Krieltar to get Zaborg. You can, I believe, you can go through Supreme Queen, but then you don't have her anymore, which would really stink. So you would go through Krieltar, because Krieltar is he's expendable in this deck. Small World is just a really cool way to search cards. You won't really see it a lot, because most decks that do want search, especially in the modern day, have them. Small World, what it does is it helps the decks that don't have the same consistency as one card combo decks, and this is a great example of that. Of course, I have 2 End of the World, I have 1 Cycle of the World, I have 1 Incantation Inception, I have 2 Called by the Grave, because this is just necessary in any one of your competitive decks. Just fantastic card. You can stop your opponent's hand traps like Maxi, Fualos, Ash Blossom, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. Forbidden Droplet is always a good card, and then Infinite Impermanence. basically to stop my opponent's monster plays, either on my turn or his turn. So this is Annihilation. This has been the showcase. It is time to get to the demonstration. Of course, going second is always what I want to do, and I'm hoping for the right setup in my hand. Okay, I do have a very, very loaded setup here. So my opponent is using a danger deck. I have a great setup in the sense that I have the access of Small World as well as multiple of the incantation monsters. So the problem with the incantation monsters is that if you're going to use Small World, you kind of want more than just one in your deck at a single moment in order to activate and to use this. Ah, man, I don't really know which one I would like to throw away. I guess Dark Ruler no more? I don't foresee him having... Yeah, I think Dark Ruler no more, because I can just imperm if he's got a problematic monster on the next turn. But you cannot really use Small World to its effect if you don't have the correct card. Guessing he's going Saruja here. Oh, Appaloosa. Okay. That's not even a problem. But if you don't have more monsters in your hand, like more of the incantations than just one, the issue is, and this is a huge issue by the way, that you're just not going to have the access you need to summon Zaborg or anything of the sort, but you don't have to use Small World just to search Zaborg. It is the reason why I have it in this deck, however. Yeah, so that's super unfortunate for you, isn't it? Alright. Goodbye, Pencil Plume. Goodbye, Krieltar. And then hello, Zaborg. So what I did was, of course, I revealed Kandal, not Pencil Plume, Kandal. And like I said, Kandal is a prime target for this. You choose Krieltar, and then you can get Zaborg. And that's exactly what I did here. It's pretty awesome. Both of these are banished face down, so they are of no use anymore. And then what I can do is, of course, I can reveal with Pencil Plume, and then Talismandra. So this kind of looks pretty bad because I've got a ritual deck that doesn't have any ritual monsters or ritual spells. Now I could obviously use Incantation Chalice Slime. I could get a Kandal on my field and Kandal will search me a ritual spell. I don't need to do this because I can just summon over both of these monsters with Zaborg. And then Zaborg is going to destroy himself. Why that's important is because then I can send cards to my graveyard up to those numbers, the number 8. I think I'm going to go ahead and send... Yeah, I think I'll send these. And then I get to choose all the cards that my opponent has to throw away. So we're going to throw away all of his links, because these are probably much easier for him to get out than his XCs. Though something like Baguska would be kind of terrible if he does get it out. So I guess what we could do here, this guy isn't so big a deal. I'm going to throw away Baguska. Goodbye. I'm gonna chain link all of these. So how I'm going to do this is very interesting. Whatever one you end the chain link with is what your opponent's going to be able to stop. If you're worried about Ash, you could always just stop the chain link with the end of Elder Entity. If you want your opponent to use Ash, you would stop it with one of your Arclights. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just do all 3 Arclights in a row and then Elder Entity. So your monster just off the field. I had pretty much a perfect hand there because Appaloosa would have fully stopped my entire plan. That's why I was like, I'm going to keep this just in case, because a danger deck, obviously you're going to go into links, at least in my opinion. So let's grab one of you. Let's grab one of you. And then let's grab one of you. So now, of course, what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to summon Ruin, Queen of Oblivion. Now, what I have to do here, I have game, but only if I get... Oh, you know what? Actually, I don't have game. I do not. Aha. So, this is kind of a bit of an unfortunate issue here. So the only thing I could do is I could use Incantation Chalice Slime here's effect, but I'm going to have to discard a card. Can I discard him? Yes, so I can. I kind of don't want to do that, though. Ah, I have a better idea. I'm going to discard the original Demise. We're going to get Candle on the field. Candle is going to give me the Incantation Ritual monster, or spell. I knew I was thinking a little bit too hard on that. Demise, Supreme King of Armageddon, and Supreme Queen. So the reason why you would want to first summon Ruin is because if she's summoned using nothing but ritual monsters as her tribute, then if all monsters used to ritual summon this card were ritual monsters, it can make a second attack during each battle phase. So that's 2 attacks. Plus, when this ritual summon card is on the field, ritual monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. So you want her out on the field first so that she can't be destroyed by card effects, and then whatever other ritual monster you summon afterwards can't be destroyed by card effects. Whereas Demise over here, so when he's on the field, your ritual monsters cannot be destroyed by battle, which is pretty great. If all monsters used to ritual summon this card were ritual monsters, you do not pay life points to activate its effects, and once per turn you can pay 2,000 life points to destroy as many other cards on the field as possible, and if you do, inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each destroyed card he controlled. I wish this said it was each card that was destroyed, because 200 damage is realistically not that big a deal. Your opponent would have to have like a full back row, a full front row, for you to do 2,000 damage. That's really just not, that's not that great. Honestly, it's not that great. And technically, you could do 2,400 damage with this, but your opponent would have to have a field spell, an extra monster zone filled, and then all of the back row and front row filled to do that. And then, if your opponent's really cheeky, so he could put a link here and then have it link to something here and then link to something here, so he can take up both the extra monster zones. I've only seen this happen a couple of times, but it is absolutely very possible. And in that case, you could do 2,600 damage. Wow. I just don't. It's really realistically not that big a deal. It's like a cherry on top situation. So if I activate this effect right now, he's going to do 2,000 damage to me in order to blow up the field. There's nothing on the field. I mean, and neither Ruin, Supreme Queen, or Demise, Supreme King can die to card effects of any kind right now. So that's perfectly fine. What's very cool is that I was not only able to show you how that Small World worked, but how that Zabor works in this deck, as well as how the extra deck is just used to facilitate a bunch of summons. Now what's crazy is, let's say I didn't have this exact setup, then I could only damage, let's say I had these 2 monsters, but neither one of them were summoned using only ritual monsters. I'm only going to do 5,900 damage this turn. And then what I could do is I could summon Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Gustav Max. I could do that damage instead. So I could do 2,000 with this, and then go into, I could blow up the field with Demise. Then I could go into Gustav Max, and then I could do 2,000 damage to my opponent. And let's say I did some damage, a couple hundred with Demise's effect here. And then After I do 2,000 damage with Gustav Max, I could go into Lieb, use his effect, he'll have 6,000 attack points. Basically, the combination of Gustav to Lieb guarantees you 8,000 damage if your opponent has nothing on board, like nothing to defend himself with. This is the reason why Dark Ruler No More is kind of like a troublesome card here. It's honestly the best card I could think of. Because even though I do also have Forbidden Droplet, you saw that. The problem is that Forbidden Droplet for me has a lot of problems. Unless your deck has an extreme amount of recursion, or a lot of quick play spells, or something of, or traps or whatever that you can use and then activate Forbidden Droplet and in the same chain to effectively throw those cards away as well. Forbidden Droplet has problems. That's why I've never crafted more than just the one that you get from the shop. And it's just because it doesn't make sense to me. Now this, like I said, this is actually a very cool situation because Ruin here was summoned by the effect of having fully a level 10 ritual monster. So what that means is she was able to attack twice. This doesn't mean 2 attacks on monsters. So regardless of whether or not I had Demise, King of Armageddon, or Supreme King of Armageddon on the field, I would have enough damage with her on the field if she can attack twice after I nuke the board to guarantee that I win, as you'll see here. So that was a perfect demonstration. I didn't even have to go through and do different takes for that. That's very awesome. I recently recorded this video and then had to re-record it because I wanted to make it my mission to show off Small World, but I didn't in that video, and then I tried to like add a second video to that to show it off, and it was just like, why even bother when I can just show off a better version of the deck, because I honestly think this is a better version of my original Annihilation combo deck, as well as demonstrate Small World, Zaborg, and then how you can OTK pretty darn easily with Demise and Ruin, both on the field, especially the Supreme versions of both, if you just have a decent hand. You don't even have to have a good hand. Just a decent hand can net you these rewards. So that is all. I want to thank you for joining me. If you like my content, please upvote and follow, or like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. And while you're at it, have a great and glorious day gaming.